Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tearing apart a moment in global affairs that feels, well, less like serious diplomacy and more like some kind of political satire. Our mission is to dissect the really quite extraordinary geopolitical fallout from the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize announcement.
That's right.
The prize itself, which went deservedly to Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado, wasn't the main event, strangely enough.
Not the biggest headline, no.
The real plot twist was this shared disappointment, bitter disappointment, actually, from two wartime adversaries, Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky.
Unbelievable.
Both apparently upset that Donald Trump got passed over. Okay, let's unpack this because, this is where global politics just turns into absurdist theater. You really couldn't make this up.
It's a real anomaly, something that forces you to stop and think. We're looking at the strategic stuff surrounding that announcement back on October 11, 2025. And this deep dive is necessary because, well, it's one of those incredibly rare times where the leader of Russia and the leader of Ukraine actually found some common ground, rhetorically speaking.
But not on peace.
No, not on a ceasefire, but on a shared political complaint, bizarrely enough. So our mission for you, the listener, is really to get past the surface irony, understand the deep strategic thinking going on here, and maybe surprisingly, look at this pragmatic, detailed peace plan that might actually come out of this shared outrage.
Right. Let's start with the backstory here. Trump's long quest for this prize. He's been pretty open about feeling he was owed it, going back to, 2018, the Kim Jong-un meetings.
At least that far back, yes. He definitely made his views known.
And during the last campaign, you could really feel that frustration. He kept saying things like, they don't give it to conservatives. They give it to people who start wars, not stop them.
Yeah, that was a common refrain.
And apparently the expectation was real this year. Our material suggests he'd, cleared a spot on the mantelpiece at Mar-a-Lago.
He had indeed. And was even workshopping an acceptance speech.
Oh, yeah. What was the working title?
Get this. Nobody has ever deserved it more.
Wow. Just wow.
The humility is overwhelming, isn't it? You have to wonder if that alone sort of sealed his fate with the committee.
Honestly, probably. That might just be the real reason right there.
So the official White House reaction after the announcement came out was pretty much what you expect. Indignation.
Accusing the Nobel Committee of choosing politics over peace.
Exactly. But the committee seemed ready for it. The chair, Jürgen Wattenfreideness, came back with this classic, cool Nordic response. Basically clarifying that the award recognizes sustained contributions to peace, not seasonal publicity tours. Yeah. And everyone pretty much understood that as a subtle, or maybe not so subtle, dig at Trump's history of big photo ops that didn't always lead anywhere long term, like with Kim Jong-un.
Peacemaking takes more than a handshake, apparently.
Sees that way.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. After the committee gave him the cold shoulder, these sympathetic comments start popping up from Kiev and Moscow.
Yeah, this is the core of it.
So first, Putin weighs in, complains the prize has lost its meaning.
Standard stuff from him, perhaps?
But then, and you have to assume this is dripping with sarcasm, he credits Trump with doing more for global stability than most of those who win it.
Right. And then suggested they give it to someone who actually prevents wars. The irony is thick.
You could cut it with a knife. And then the really tricky diplomatic move from Zelensky, the guy leading the fight against Russia, offers sympathy. Says Trump deserved recognition for trying to broker peace.
Now that raises eyebrows.
Exactly. Why would Zelensky publicly praise the man who keeps hinting Ukraine should just, cut a deal with Putin?
Well, it looks purely strategic. Putin's motive is pretty clear, right? He gets to bash Western institutions while praising the Western leader he, probably prefers.
Standard playbook.
But Zelensky, that feels like a very calculated diplomatic nudge. It's like he's trying to tempt Trump back into the Ukraine diplomacy game.
How so?
He repeated something he'd said before. If Trump could actually end the war, Ukraine would support his Nobel nomination. It's almost like he's dangling the prize.
So harnessing Trump's ego, essentially. Saying, we know what you want, come and get it by helping us.
Precisely. It's a direct appeal to that desire for the prize.
Which leads to that perfect quote, summing it all up. Only Trump could make the leader of Ukraine and the leader of Russia mad about the same thing for completely different reasons.
It captures the absurdity perfectly.
But our sources suggest this isn't just irony for irony's sake. There's potentially a serious endgame here. How do you actually turn this bizarre alignment, this shared feeling about Trump's prize into something real, like an actual peace plan.
What shared ambition, that's the potential leverage point.
Yeah.
This is where the idea of a Trump Accord comes into play, and maybe even a triple Nobel.
A triple Nobel, you mean?
Putin, Zelensky, and Trump sharing the 2026 prize.
Yes. Okay, it's ambitious.
It is. But if you connect this to the bigger picture, think about history. Almost every major peace deal involves managing personal ego, often massive egos.
True. Camp David, for instance.
Exactly. And look at the current situation. This war is grinding on, fueled by pride as much as anything. Russia probably knows it can't win decisively anymore. Ukraine needs constant Western help. The West is getting tired.
So the conditions for some kind of face-saving peace might actually be there.
They might be.
Yeah.
And the political map then becomes about lining up what each leader really wants. Trump wants the Nobel, his legacy piece.
Right.
Putin wants sanctions relief, maybe some global validation, getting back on the world stage.
Okay.
And Zelensky, he wants peace, but with dignity.
Yeah.
And crucially, a massive reconstruction effort for Ukraine.
So aligning those three wants is the key.
That's the theory. Trump's huge ego, which is often seen as a problem in diplomacy, could potentially become this incredibly powerful tool if it's laser-focused on this one. Massive achievement, ending Europe's biggest land war since World War II.
Okay, let's shift then. From the personalities, the egos, to the actual plan. Material we looked at outlines a very specific detailed blueprint. What does it actually propose?
Well, the political compromises it requires are pretty breathtaking, honestly. The framework suggests Zelensky would start by pushing for a constitutional amendment.
To do what?
To remove the NATO membership clause from Ukraine's constitution, acknowledging it as, quote, the most dangerous flashpoint and, well, a primary driver of the conflict from Russia's perspective.
Whoa, removing the NATO goal constitutionally. That sounds like political dynamite in Kyiv. Wouldn't that be seen as giving in to Russian demands?
It's undoubtedly the biggest political hurdle. Absolutely massive. And that's why the rest of the blueprint has to be so comprehensive. The idea is you mitigate that risk by getting a total, guaranteed ceasefire and unlocking enormous reconstruction aid.
So trading a future, maybe theoretical, security guarantee for immediate concrete peace and rebuilding.
That seems to be the calculus, yes. A very tough trade, but perhaps the only one available.
And alongside that,
he'd call for new presidential elections. This is also key. It gives him, or whoever wins, a fresh democratic mandate specifically for this peace deal. It reframes the politics from war survival to peace implementation.
okay. Assuming they somehow clear that huge political hurdle about NATO, what happens on the ground? How does the fighting stop?
The plan calls for an immediate mutual ceasefire. Then, a significant military pullback, a 50-mile troop withdrawal on both sides.
Creating a buffer zone.
Exactly, a wide demilitarized buffer zone. And crucially, this zone wouldn't be empty. It would be patrolled by a neutral UN peacekeeping force.
UN peacekeepers, okay. Any specifics on who?
Yes, and this is interesting to really emphasize neutrality and maybe signal a move towards a more multipolar approach. The proposal specifically suggests troops from non-aligned countries. It actually names India and Nepal.
India and Nepal, okay. Nations with strong peacekeeping traditions, but outside the main East-West blocs.
Precisely.
Now, the really explosive part, I imagine, the territory. How does this plan deal with Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea?
This is the referenda mechanism. And yes, it's the most controversial element, but maybe the most decisive.
How would it work?
It calls for internationally monitored referenda. And not just in the Donbas, in all the disputed regions. Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea.
All of them, even Crimea?
All of them, under strict international supervision, likely the UN. And the residents would get 3 binding choices.
Which are?
1, remain within a federal Ukraine, but with guaranteed autonomy.
Yeah.
2, form independent states. Or 3, join the Russian Federation.
But, okay, let me push back here. Holding votes, even UN-monitored ones, in places like Crimea, doesn't that risk just legitimizing the Russian annexation after the fact? How does Zelensky sell potentially losing territory and internationally recognized votes?
That's the absolute core of the challenge and why the international monitoring is so vital. Right now, Russia holds these sham referendums that nobody recognizes.
Right.
This proposal forces Russia to agree to a legitimate process run by outsiders, where independence or staying with Ukraine are real guaranteed options on the ballot. It's definitely an imperfect solution. Some might call it rewarding aggression.
Some definitely would.
But it acknowledges the hard reality. that these territorial disputes probably can't just be wished away or settled entirely by force without decades more conflict. It offers a democratic, albeit painful, way out.
A democratic compromise instead of endless war.
That's the pitch. And to sweeten this incredibly bitter pill, there's the final piece, the Global Reconstruction Compact.
Okay, rebuilding Ukraine, how does that work?
It envisions a huge multilateral investment package. Think Marshall Plan level, but funded jointly.
By whom?
The EU, the US, crucially Russia, and also key Gulf states. It mentions Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar.
Russia contributing to rebuild Ukraine alongside the West.
That's the idea. It turns ending the war into this massive joint project. It makes East and West partners, in theory, in rebuilding the region. It gives everyone a financial stake in making sure the peace actually lasts.
A Marshall Plan for peace, as you said.
Exactly. And, this really raises that fundamental question. Is an imperfect peace, a politically difficult peace based on compromise and these kinds of referenda, ultimately better than just letting the war grind on endlessly, costing countless lives and resources?
That's the question the framework forces onto the table.
And it's designed, you could argue, specifically to appeal to the legacy ambitions of those three leaders.
It's just such a dramatic paradox when you step back. Two absolute enemies, Putin and Zelensky, agreeing on basically nothing, except that this third guy, Trump, who one needs help from and the other kind of mocks,
was somehow robbed of a peace prize he desperately wants.
Yeah. And the conclusion from the analysis we read is fascinating. The key to Trump finally getting his Nobel and maybe actual peace in Ukraine, it's actually in the hands of Putin and Zelensky now.
They have to decide whether to turn this shared rhetorical support for Trump, this ironic moment, into actual concrete steps based on a framework like this.
That's quite something.
It is. And, it's a compelling thought to end on. We often think, don't we, that solving huge global crises needs saints, perfect diplomats.
The idealists.
Right. But history often shows something else. It shows the power of ego when it's channeled. Think back to 1978. Sadat and Begin, bitter enemies, won the Nobel together, brokered by Jimmy Carter. Not exactly saints, any of them, driven by their own ambitions for legacy.
An imperfect deal, driven by ego, but it held.
Exactly. And maybe we're seeing the blueprint for something similar here, just stranger, much stranger. What if the next really big peace deal only happens because these three massive egos, Trump, Putin, Zelensky, decide their personal ambition for validation, for history, for legacy, finally outweighs their immediate political fights?
It's a provocative thought.
It is. A challenge for you, our listener, to really chew on. If irony and ambition are the only tools left that might actually work, is it a price worth paying to end the war? Maybe harnessing that irony is the most pragmatic move left on the board.